My husband asked for a divorce by email while I was pregnant and drained our joint account. But he didn't expect this. Part 1. The email. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the fetal monitor. Beep, beep, beep. My daughter's heartbeat, steady and strong, even as mine felt like it was breaking. I was 34 weeks pregnant, on mandatory bed rest for preeclampsia. My blood pressure had spiked dangerously 3 days ago, and my doctor had admitted me for observation. Medical speak for, "We're worried you might have a stroke." My phone was my only connection to the outside world. My husband, James, had visited yesterday for 20 minutes, standing awkwardly by the door, not touching me, barely looking at me. He'd made excuses about work, about deadlines, about needing to get back to the office. "I'll come back tomorrow," he'd said. He hadn't. It was 3 p.m. on a Thursday when I refreshed my email out of pure boredom. I'd already scrolled through social media, watched 2 episodes of a show I couldn't remember, and read the same pregnancy article 3 times. The email was from James. Subject line, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped even before I opened it. "Elena, I've been trying to find the right way to say this, but there is no right way. I want a divorce. I know the timing is terrible, but I can't keep pretending. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time. This marriage isn't working, and bringing a baby into this dysfunction would be a mistake. I've spoken to a lawyer, and she says the best course of action is to file now before the baby is born. It will make custody arrangements cleaner. I've moved my things out of the house. You'll find the divorce papers in the desk drawer when you get home. Please sign them and send them to the address listed. I'm sorry it had to be this way. James." I read it 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. He was asking for a divorce, by email, while I was in a hospital bed, carrying his child. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The room tilted, and the beeping of the monitor seemed to get louder, more insistent. A nurse rushed in. "Mrs. Reyes? Your blood pressure just spiked. Are you okay?" Was I okay? My husband had just asked for a divorce via email while I was hospitalized with a high-risk pregnancy. Was I okay? "I'm fine," I managed to say, though my voice sounded far away. "Just, can I have some water?" She left to get water, and I sat there staring at the email, trying to make sense of it. I've moved my things out of the house. He'd left, just like that, without even telling me to my face. The best course of action is to file now before the baby is born. He'd talked to a lawyer, made plans, decided the future of our family without even consulting me. I needed to check our bank account. The thought came suddenly, urgently. I opened my banking app with trembling fingers, waited for it to load, and pulled up our joint checking account. Balance, $0.0. I stared at the screen, certain I was seeing it wrong. We'd had over $40,000 in that account. Money we'd been saving for the baby, for my maternity leave, for the down payment on a bigger house. Gone. All of it. I pulled up the transaction history. Yesterday, while I was lying in a hospital bed hooked up to monitors, James had transferred every penny to an account I didn't have access to. $42,617. Transferred in one lump sum at 2:47 p.m. Around the same time he'd been standing in my hospital room, promising to come back tomorrow. The nurse returned with water, took one look at my face, and called for the doctor. "Mrs. Reyes, I need you to breathe," she said, her hand on my shoulder. "Slow, deep breaths. You're having a panic attack and it's affecting your blood pressure." But I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think beyond the 2 facts destroying my world. My husband wanted a divorce, and he'd stolen our money. Part 2. The first night. They sedated me. Not heavily. They couldn't, not with the baby, but enough to calm me down, to bring my blood pressure back to something that wouldn't kill me or my daughter. I drifted in and out of sleep, the email replaying in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. When I finally surfaced around 8 p.m., my doctor was there, Dr. Sarah Chen, who I'd been seeing throughout my pregnancy. She was in her 40s, calm and competent, with kind eyes that had seen every pregnancy complication imaginable. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like my husband just asked for a divorce by email and stole all our money," I said flatly. Her expression shifted from professional concern to personal anger. "He did what?" I showed her the email, showed her the bank account, watched her face harden with each word she read. I've been doing this for 15 years, she said finally, and I have never seen such cowardly, cruel behavior. While you're in the hospital with his child, apparently he's been planning it for a while. Do you have family you can call? Someone who can help you with this? That was the thing. I didn't. My parents had died in a car accident 5 years ago. I had a brother in Seattle, but we weren't close. James's family had never particularly liked me, always thought I wasn't good enough for their golden boy. Not really, I admitted. Dr. Chen sat down in the chair beside my bed. Okay, here's what's going to happen. First, we're going to keep you calm and stable for your baby's sake. That's priority number 1. Second, when you're ready, we're going to help you figure out your options. But right now, tonight, you need to rest. How can I rest when... Because your daughter needs you to, she said firmly. Elena, I know everything feels like it's falling apart, but you are strong, you are smart, and you are not alone. We're going to get through this. I wanted to believe her, but lying in that hospital bed, pregnant and abandoned and broke, I felt anything but strong. That night, I couldn't sleep despite the sedatives. My mind raced through the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. James had been distant for a while. I'd attributed it to stress from work. He was a financial advisor at a prestigious firm, always working late, always on his phone. He'd stopped touching me around the time I started showing. No more casual affection, no more intimacy. I'm just tired, he'd said when I asked about it. He'd been irritated by my pregnancy symptoms, the morning sickness, the fatigue, the emotional swings. You're being dramatic, he'd said more than once. Looking back, the signs had been there. I'd just been too hopeful, too trusting to see them. Around 2 a.m., I made a decision. I couldn't control what James had done, but I could control what I did next. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. I took screenshots of the email, screenshots of the bank account showing the zero balance and the transaction history. I forwarded everything to my personal email address, the one James didn't have access to. Then I started making a list on my phone's notes app. What I know. James filed for divorce while I'm hospitalized. He emptied our joint account, $42,607 stolen. He's already moved out. He's consulted a lawyer. He wants divorce finalized before baby is born. What I need: lawyer, divorce family law specialist, access to money for living expenses, safe place to go when discharged, prenatal care continuation, plan for childbirth and after, evidence to gather, all bank, statements for past year, credit card statements, property documents for house, any other joint assets, documentation of his abandonment. The list helped. It gave me something to focus on besides the betrayal, besides the fear. By the time the sun rose through my hospital window, I had a plan. It wasn't complete, and it might not work, but it was something. I wasn't going to be weak. I wasn't going to be helpless. James thought he could destroy me with an email and an empty bank account. He was wrong. Part 3. The lawyer. Dr. Chen came by during morning rounds and found me sitting up, phone in hand, taking notes. You look better, she said, checking my blood pressure. Still elevated, but better than last night. I need to make some phone calls, I told her. Can I do that? Keep it brief. Don't stress yourself out. I waited until she left, then called the first family law attorney I could find who had good reviews and took emergency consultations. Her name was Patricia Alvarez, and she could see me that afternoon. At the hospital? She asked when I explained my situation. I'm on mandatory bed rest. I can't leave. I'll come to you. She arrived at 2 p.m., a woman in her 50s with an expensive suit and a leather briefcase. She looked like she could destroy someone in court without breaking a sweat. I liked her immediately. Show me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I did. The email, the bank statements, the timeline of events. I even told her about James's behavior over the past few months, his distance, his complaints about my pregnancy, his increasing absences. Patricia took notes, her expression growing darker with each detail. This is one of the most egregious cases of spousal abandonment I've seen, she said finally. Requesting a divorce via email while you're hospitalized, draining joint accounts without notice, moving out while you're unable to defend yourself or protect your interests. What can I do? A lot, actually. First, we file an emergency motion for temporary support. He can't just abandon you while you're pregnant and unable to work. The court will order him to pay for your medical expenses, living expenses, and legal fees while the divorce is pending. He took all the money. I can't afford. You don't need to pay me up front. I work on contingency for cases like this. I get paid when we win, and trust me, we're going to win. She leaned forward. Elena, your husband made a crucial mistake. He left a paper trail. He admitted to the divorce in writing. He emptied the account in a way that's fully documented. And he did all of this while you're in a vulnerable position carrying his child. No judge is going to look kindly on this. For the first time since reading that email, I felt a spark of hope. What else? I asked. We're going to go after everything. The house? Is it in both names? Yes. Good. We'll file for exclusive possession while the divorce is pending. He abandoned it, so you have stronger claim. What about his retirement accounts? Investments? He has a 401k through work. I don't know about investments. We'll subpoena his financial records. If he's been hiding money, we'll find it. She made more notes. What about his income? What does he make? Around $200,000 a year, I think. Maybe more with bonuses. Patricia's eyes gleamed. And you? Were you working? I was a teacher. I took leave when my blood pressure started getting dangerous. I was planning to return after maternity leave. Perfect. So he's high income. You're currently unable to work due to pregnancy complications caused by the child he helped create. And he abandoned you without support. We're going to bury him in child support and alimony. Over the next hour, Patricia outlined her strategy. We'd file emergency motions immediately for temporary support, exclusive possession of the house, and protection from further dissipation of assets. We'd request full financial discovery to uncover any hidden money, and we'd document every single instance of his abandonment and cruel behavior. The email is gold, she said. It shows premeditation and calculated cruelty. No jury will sympathize with a man who divorces his pregnant wife by email. Do you think this will go to trial? Probably not. When James sees the evidence we have and realizes what he's facing in court, he'll likely settle. Men like him, high earners who care about their reputation, don't want their dirty laundry aired in public. After Patricia left, I felt energized for the first time in days. I had a plan. I had an advocate. I had hope. But I also had something else. Rage. James had thought he could do this to me. Thought he could throw me away like garbage, take everything, and move on with his life. He was about to learn that I wasn't as weak as he assumed. Part 4. The Discovery. Patricia worked fast. By the next morning, she'd filed emergency motions with the court. 3 separate filings totaling over 100 pages of legal documentation. By that afternoon, a process server had tracked James down at his office and served him the papers in front of his colleagues. I found out later from someone who'd been there that his face had gone white when he read them, that he'd excused himself and spent 30 minutes locked in his office, that when he emerged, he looked shaken in a way no one had ever seen before. He called me 20 minutes later, and I let it go to voicemail. Elena, what the hell? You're suing me? I get that you're upset about the divorce, but this is ridiculous. We can handle this like adults. We don't need lawyers getting involved and making everything complicated. Just call me back, please. The audacity was breathtaking. He could ask for a divorce by email while I was hospitalized and steal our money, but somehow I was the one not handling things like adults. I saved the voicemail and didn't call back. He tried again an hour later, this time sounding less conciliatory and more angry. You need to drop this legal nonsense, Elena. You're wasting money we don't have on lawyers who are just going to drag this out and take everything. Just sign the papers I left you and we can work out a reasonable arrangement for the baby. I'm willing to be fair, but not if you keep attacking me like this. Still didn't call back. The third call came at 9 p.m. By then, I imagined, he'd had time to actually read through Patricia's filings, to see the evidence we'd already compiled, to understand just how much trouble he was in. His voice on this voicemail made my blood run cold. Fine. You want to play hardball? We'll play hardball, Elena. My lawyer says we can prove you're an unfit mother. Multiple hospitalizations for mental health issues, unstable living situation, no income, history of erratic behavior. You really think a judge is going to give you custody when you can't even take care of yourself? Think again. I'll fight you for full custody, and I'll win. And then you'll have nothing. No baby, no money, no house, nothing. So maybe you should reconsider this whole lawsuit thing before you lose everything. I'd never been hospitalized for mental health. My only hospitalization was this one, for pregnancy complications. I'd never had an unstable living situation. We'd lived in the same house for 3 years. My erratic behavior was being upset that my husband had abandoned me while pregnant, but he was willing to lie, willing to threaten me with losing my daughter, willing to do whatever it took to avoid accountability for what he'd done. I saved that voicemail too, and sent all 3 to Patricia immediately. Her response came within minutes. Perfect. Keep them coming. Every threatening message, every lie, every attempt at intimidation. It all becomes evidence. He's digging his own grave. Meanwhile, I started my own investigation from my hospital bed. I still had access to our home computer remotely, or rather, I had the passwords to our shared accounts and cloud storage. James had always been careless about security, using the same password for everything. Phoenix 2019, his favorite sports team, and the year we got married. He'd never bothered to change it, probably never imagining I'd use it to investigate him. From my hospital bed, hooked up to monitors tracking my blood pressure and my daughter's heartbeat, I logged into our shared cloud storage and started methodically going through every folder, every file, every email backup. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Emails going back 6 months between James and a woman named Vanessa Chen. The name meant nothing to me at first, but the content of the emails left no doubt about their relationship. They started professionally enough. Vanessa was apparently a client of his firm, something about managing her investment portfolio after a divorce settlement. But within weeks, the emails had shifted from professional to personal to intimate. I can't stop thinking about last night, James had written in March. When can I see you again? Whenever you want, Vanessa had replied. My calendar is always open for you. By April, they were making plans for a future together. Once the divorce is final, we can finally be together properly, James had written. No more sneaking around, no more excuses, just us. What about the baby? Vanessa had asked. Your wife is pregnant, James. That complicates things. I'll pay the minimum required child support and that's it. Elena can handle the rest. I never wanted kids anyway. This whole pregnancy was her idea, not mine. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. The monitors beeped more insistently, picking up on my elevated heart rate and blood pressure. A nurse poked her head in. Mrs. Reyes, everything okay? Fine, I managed to say. Just reading something upsetting. Try to stay calm, she urged. Deep breaths. Think of the baby. I was thinking of the baby. My daughter, who James had just described as an unwanted complication. My daughter, who he was already planning to provide minimal support for while he built a new life with another woman. I took those deep breaths the nurse recommended, but not to calm down. To steady myself so I could keep reading, keep documenting, keep gathering the evidence that would bury him. There were dozens more emails. Hundreds, actually. I spent the rest of that day and most of the night reading through them, taking screenshots of everything, organizing them by date and topic. The affair had started 6 months ago, right around the time I'd told James I was pregnant. Looking back now with this new knowledge, his reaction to the pregnancy made more sense. He hadn't been shocked or worried like I'd thought. He'd been angry, because my pregnancy interfered with his plans to leave me for Vanessa. But I found more than just evidence of the affair in those cloud files. I found spreadsheets, detailed financial planning documents that James had created, outlining his strategy for the divorce. One spreadsheet was titled Asset Protection Strategy, and it made me physically ill to read. He'd started moving money out of our joint accounts 8 months ago. Small amounts at first, just a few $100s here and there. Amounts I might notice but wouldn't really question. Extra expenses, he'd say if I asked. Work dinners, client gifts, that sort of thing. But those small amounts had added up. By the time he'd made that final $42,000 transfer, he'd already siphoned nearly $20,000 from our accounts into ones I didn't know existed. The spreadsheet showed a separate bank account I'd never heard of, opened 8 months ago at a bank across town. Regular deposits of money diverted from our joint account, sometimes from his work bonuses, sometimes just transferred in amounts too small to trigger fraud alerts. By the time he'd emptied our joint account completely, He'd already stashed away nearly $60,000 in accounts with only his name on them. $60,000. Money we'd been saving together for our future, for our daughter, for the down payment on a bigger house. Money I'd contributed to from my teaching salary, from the part-time tutoring I'd done, from every careful choice to save instead of spend. Stolen. Methodically, deliberately stolen while he planned his exit strategy. But the most damning document was one titled simply, Timeline. It was James's plan, laid out in clinical detail. Month 1 to 2, move money to separate accounts. Month 3 to 4, consult divorce attorney, prepare paperwork. Month 5 to 6, continue transferring assets, establish relationship with V. Month 7, wait for E's pregnancy complications, inevitable given her health history. Month 8, file for divorce while E is vulnerable and unable to defend herself. Month 9, finalize divorce before baby is born to minimize custody complications. Month 10, start new life. With V, he'd planned this. Not just the affair, not just the divorce, but my vulnerability. He'd been waiting for pregnancy complications, banking on my health history of high blood pressure to create an opportunity where I'd be too weak to fight back. And it had almost worked. If I'd been anyone else, if I'd been the weak, helpless woman he'd been counting on, it would have worked. But I wasn't weak. I'd never been weak. I'd just been trusting the wrong person. I documented everything. Every email, every spreadsheet, every planning document. I created folders on my phone organizing the evidence by category: financial fraud, adultery, premeditation, threats. When I sent it all to Patricia, over 200 screenshots and documents, her response was immediate. Call me, her text said. Now. I called. Elena, she said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. This is devastating for his case. Beyond devastating. He documented his own fraud. He admitted to deliberately planning to divorce you when you were vulnerable. He admitted the affair predated the pregnancy, and that he never wanted the child. This is a prosecutor's dream. A prosecutor? Some of what he did might be criminal. The forged signatures on financial documents, the deliberate exploitation of your vulnerable state. I want to talk to the DA's office about this. Will that help the divorce case? Bauer, Part 5. The emergency hearing. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following week. Dr. Chen tried to delay it, arguing that the stress wasn't good for my blood pressure, but I insisted. I need this resolved, I told her. Not knowing what's going to happen is worse than dealing with it. Patricia arranged for me to appear via video call from my hospital room. The judge allowed it given my medical situation. James appeared in person, wearing his best suit, looking polished and professional. His lawyer was a sharp-looking man in his 40s who probably cost a fortune. I wore a hospital gown and had monitors attached to my belly, tracking my daughter's heartbeat. The visual contrast was striking. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Martinez. She looked at the case file, then at James, then at me on the screen. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said. Mr. Reyes, you initiated divorce proceedings via email while your wife was hospitalized for pregnancy complications? Your Honor, I tried to discuss this with her in person, but she was always too upset. Answer the question. Did you or did you not initiate divorce proceedings via email? I did, but... And did you remove $42,617 from a joint marital account without your wife's knowledge or consent? James's lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, my client had every right to access his own money. It was a joint account, Judge Martinez interrupted, which means it belonged to both parties. Did you inform Mrs. Reyes before making this transfer? Silence. Mr. Reyes? No, Your Honor. The judge made a note. And you moved out of the marital home while Mrs. Reyes was hospitalized and unable to protect her interests? I needed space to think. These are yes or no questions, Mr. Reyes. Did you move out while your wife was hospitalized? Yes. Judge Martinez turned to Patricia. Ms. Alvarez, I've reviewed your emergency motions. What are you requesting? Patricia stood. Your Honor, we're requesting several things. First, immediate return of all marital funds that Mr. Reyes removed from the joint account. Second, exclusive possession of the marital home for Mrs. Reyes. Third, temporary spousal support of $8,000 per month to cover medical expenses, living expenses, and pregnancy-related costs. Fourth, an order preventing Mr. Reyes from dissipating any further marital assets, and fifth, payment of Mrs. Reyes's legal fees. James's lawyer objected to everything, arguing that I was being greedy, that James had rights too, that the requests were excessive. Judge Martinez cut him off. "Counselor, your client abandoned his pregnant wife while she was hospitalized, emptied their bank account, and filed for divorce via email. I'm not inclined to view his rights sympathetically at the moment." She granted every single motion. The look on James's face was worth every moment of stress. "Mr. Reyes," Judge Martinez continued, "you will return all funds removed from the joint account within 48 hours. You will pay Mrs. Reyes $8,000 per month starting immediately. You will not enter the marital home without her written permission. You will not access, transfer, or otherwise dispose of any marital assets, and you will pay her legal fees. Do you understand? Your Honor, I can't afford— You make $200,000 a year, Mr. Reyes. You can afford it. These orders are effective immediately." She banged her gavel. "We'll reconvene in 60 days for a full hearing on the divorce petition. Until then, do not contact Mrs. Reyes except through counsel." The video call ended, and I sat in my hospital bed, shaking with adrenaline and relief. Patricia called me 5 minutes later. "That," she said, "is what we call a complete victory." Namdash Part 6. Coming home. I was discharged from the hospital a week later, with strict instructions to continue bed rest at home and monitor my blood pressure twice daily. The house felt different when I returned. Empty spaces where James's things had been. His clothes gone from the closet. His toiletries missing from the bathroom. Even his favorite coffee mug was absent from the kitchen cabinet. He'd taken everything of his, but he'd left plenty of evidence behind. I found the divorce papers in the desk drawer, exactly as he'd said in his email. They were cold, clinical, requesting minimal child support and no alimony. He wanted a clean break. Too bad for him, that's not what he was going to get. I'd arranged for a friend from my teaching days, Maria, to stay with me. She'd taken a week off work to help me get settled and make sure I didn't overdo it. "What do you need?" she asked, helping me up the stairs to the bedroom. "Coffee, wine, a time machine to go back and not marry James. I can get you decaf tea and sympathy. The time machine's on back order." I laughed despite everything. Maria had always been able to make me laugh. Over the next few days, I started going through the house systematically, looking for anything that might be useful for the divorce case. I found credit card statements showing thousands of dollars in charges at restaurants and hotels I'd never been to, receipts for jewelry I'd never received, a receipt for a weekend at a luxury resort during a time when James had told me he was at a work conference. Everything went into my evidence folder. I also found something unexpected, a burner phone, tucked into the back of James's desk drawer. It was still charged, still unlocked, and it was full of text messages between James and Vanessa going back over a year. My hands trembled as I read through them. The affair had started long before I got pregnant, back when we were supposedly happy, supposedly trying to start a family. "She'll never know," James had texted. "She's too trusting. What if she finds out?" Vanessa had replied. "She won't. And even if she does, what's she going to do? She has no money of her own, no family support. She's completely dependent on me." He'd planned this. Not just the divorce, but the entire strategy of making me financially dependent so I'd have no options when he left. Except he'd underestimated me. I photographed every message on the burner phone, then called Patricia. "I found more evidence," I told her. "A lot more." When I showed her what I'd found, she actually smiled. "Elena, this is devastating for his case. He admitted to deliberately keeping you financially dependent. He admitted the affair predated the pregnancy, and he documented his own premeditation in divorcing you once you were in a vulnerable position. What does this mean? It means we're not just going to win. We're going to destroy him." Part 7. The Counteroffensive. While I was on bed rest, Patricia worked on our counteroffensive. She filed an amended divorce petition, this time from my side. Instead of accepting James's terms, we laid out our own. Full custody of our daughter, with supervised visitation for James. 50% of all marital assets, including his 401k and any hidden accounts. Alimony of $5,000 per month for 5 years. Child support of $3,000 per month. full payment of all medical expenses related to the pregnancy and birth, reimbursement for all marital funds he'd removed, payment of all my legal fees. James's response was predictably angry. He called Patricia's office directly, screaming about how I was trying to rob him, how I was being vindictive, how I'd never get what I was asking for. Patricia calmly informed him that all communication needed to go through attorneys and hung up. Then he tried a different tactic. He showed up at the house. I was resting in bed when I heard pounding on the front door. Maria answered it. "You can't be here," I heard her say. "There's a court order. This is my house," James shouted. "I have a right to be here." I called 911 and Patricia simultaneously. The police arrived within minutes. They found James on the front porch, still arguing with Maria, insisting he had a right to enter his own home. "Sir, there's a court order granting your wife exclusive possession of this residence," the officer said, showing him the paperwork. "If you don't leave immediately, we'll arrest you for violating a court order." James left, but not before shouting up at my bedroom window, "You think you've won, Elena? You haven't. I'll make sure you regret this." Another threat. Another piece of evidence. The police filed a report. Patricia filed for a restraining order. The judge granted it. James was now legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me or the house. But he wasn't done trying to intimidate me. He started a whisper campaign, telling mutual friends that I was unstable, that I was trying to trap him with the pregnancy, that I was making false accusations to get money from him. Some people believed him. I lost a few friends who thought I was being unreasonable, who said I should be the bigger person and just let him go. But most people, when they heard the full story, the email, the stolen money, the affair, the abandonment, sided with me. And then Vanessa made a crucial mistake. She posted on social media about her amazing boyfriend and their plans for the future, posted photos of them together, looking happy, looking very much like a couple. The photos were dated. Some of them went back 8 months. Patricia had them downloaded and printed within an hour. "This proves the affair timeline," she said. "And it proves he was already planning a future with her while you were pregnant with his child. This is going to play very badly in court." Meanwhile, my pregnancy continued. I hit 36 weeks, then 37. Dr. Chen was cautiously optimistic that I'd make it to term despite the bed rest and stress. "Your daughter is a fighter," she said during one of my appointments. "Just like her mother." I was 38 weeks when James made his biggest mistake yet. He filed a motion claiming I was an unfit mother based on my unstable mental state and inability to care for a child while on bed rest. Patricia's response was surgical. She submitted medical records showing my bed rest was purely for physical health reasons related to blood pressure, not mental health. She submitted character references from my former principal, my colleagues, my friends. She submitted my clean background check, my teaching credentials, my spotless record. And then she submitted James's own words, the emails where he admitted he never wanted kids anyway, the texts where he called our daughter an inconvenience, the voicemails where he threatened me. The judge was not pleased. "Mr. Reyes," she said at the next hearing, "filing frivolous motions based on false claims is not helping your case. In fact, it's making me question your judgment and credibility. Consider this your only warning." James's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Archer Part 8. The Birth. My daughter decided to make her entrance at exactly 39 weeks and 2 days. I was at home, on bed rest as usual, when my water broke. Maria called an ambulance while I tried to breathe through the first contractions. "Should we call James?" Maria asked as we waited. "No," I said firmly. He made his choice. The labor was long and difficult. My blood pressure spiked several times, and at one point, Dr. Chen warned me they might need to do an emergency C-section. But my daughter was as stubborn as I was. After 14 hours, she arrived naturally, screaming her displeasure at the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 20 inches long, perfect in every way. I named her Sofia Elena Reyes, Sofia after my mother, Elena after me. The nurse asked if I wanted them to notify the father. "He knows my due date," I said. "If he cared, he'd be here." He wasn't there for the birth. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't send flowers or a card. His lawyer filed paperwork 3 days later requesting a paternity test. Patricia's response was withering. "Your client wants a divorce from his pregnant wife but questions paternity? Make up your mind, counselor. The paternity test came back 99.999% match. James was definitely Sophia's father, which meant he was definitely on the hook for child support. I spent a week in the hospital recovering, Maria staying with me to help with Sophia. Friends from work came to visit, bringing gifts and well wishes. My brother flew in from Seattle, meeting his niece for the first time. "I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier," he said, holding Sophia with awkward care. "I should have been supporting you through this." "You're here now," I told him. "That's what matters." When we finally came home, the house felt different. Not empty anymore, but full. Full of Sophia's cries and coos, full of baby equipment, full of purpose. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, terrified of doing everything wrong, but I was also happy, genuinely happy. For the first time since that email, Sophia was mine, my daughter, my responsibility, my joy. James had given up any claim to this happiness when he sent that cowardly email. His loss. Part 9. The settlement. The divorce mediation was scheduled for when Sophia was 6 weeks old. Patricia had advised taking a more generous maternity leave before diving back into legal proceedings, but I was insistent. I wanted this chapter of my life closed, wanted the uncertainty over, the legal limbo ended, so I could move forward with clarity and closure. "Are you sure you're ready?" Patricia asked when I confirmed I wanted to proceed. 6 weeks postpartum? You're still healing. The stress could affect your recovery. The stress of not knowing is worse, I told her. I need this done. We met in a conference room at Patricia's office, sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Her and me on one side of a long mahogany table, James and his lawyer on the other. A professional mediator sat at the head, a neutral party whose job was to facilitate agreement. It was the first time I'd seen James face-to-face since before Sophia was born. 8 months since he'd stood awkwardly in my hospital room making excuses about work. 7 months since he'd sent that email that destroyed everything. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had once been well-built and athletic. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His hair, usually perfectly styled, looked unkempt. He'd aged years and months. Part of me felt satisfaction at seeing him brought low, but mostly I just felt nothing. This man who I'd loved, who I'd built a life with, had become a stranger. Someone I'd once known, but no longer recognized. He couldn't quite meet my eyes when I walked in. He looked at Patricia, at the mediator, at the papers in front of him, anywhere but at me. Good. He should be ashamed. "Let's begin," the mediator said, an older woman with gray hair and a gentle but firm demeanor. "We're here today to try to reach an agreement on the dissolution of your marriage and custody arrangements for your daughter, Sophia. I've reviewed both preliminary filings, and I understand there are significant disagreements about asset division and support. Mr. Reyes, I believe you have a settlement offer prepared?" James's lawyer, a sharp-looking man in his 40s named Richard Holbrook, who probably cost $300 an hour, slid a document across the table toward Patricia and me. I didn't even need to read it to know it would be insulting. Patricia reviewed it with the careful attention of someone scanning for landmines. Her expression remained neutral, professional, but I could see the slight tightening around her eyes, the way her jaw clenched almost imperceptibly. Then she slid the document back across the table without a word. "Unacceptable," she said simply. "You haven't even heard our reasoning," Holbrook started. "I don't need to hear your reasoning. The offer is insulting and demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of both the law and your client's position." Patricia pulled out her own document. "Let me be very clear about what we're dealing with here." She laid out the case methodically, point by point. Your client initiated divorce proceedings via email while Mrs. Reyes was hospitalized for pregnancy complications. He removed $42,617 from joint marital accounts without notice or consent. He conducted a documented affair for 6 months prior to requesting the divorce. He created detailed plans to exploit his wife's medical vulnerability. He's made threats about pursuing full custody based on fabricated mental health concerns. And he has not once visited or attempted to meet his daughter in the 6 weeks since her birth. With each point, James seemed to sink lower in his chair. "Now," Patricia continued, "your offer proposes $1,000 per month in child support for a man who makes $200,000 annually. It requests 50-50 custody when your client hasn't even met his daughter. It offers no alimony despite deliberate financial abuse, and it suggests splitting marital assets 50-50 despite your client's dissipation and fraud. She slid our counteroffer across the table. This is what we're prepared to accept. And frankly, it's generous given the circumstances. Holbrook picked up our proposal and his eyes widened slightly. He leaned over to consult with James in hushed tones. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see James's face reddening, see him shaking his head emphatically. "This is outrageous," Holbrook said finally. "You're asking for primary custody, $2,800 monthly child support, $4,000 monthly alimony, 60% of all marital assets, the house with no buyout, all medical expenses, and legal fees. My client would be financially crippled. Your client chose to commit adultery, fraud, and abandonment," Patricia said coolly. "He made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. And frankly, given what we could ask for, and what a judge would likely award given the egregious nature of his behavior, this offer is remarkably restrained. We'll never agree to this. Then we'll see you in court. And I should mention," Patricia pulled out another folder, "we'll be calling Vanessa Chen as a witness. She's been very cooperative since learning that my client is prepared to name her as a co-respondent in an alienation of affection lawsuit." James's face went white. "You talked to Vanessa?" "Our investigator did, yes. Lovely woman. Very forthcoming about the timeline of your relationship, the promises you made, the money you spent on her from marital accounts." Patricia smiled pleasantly. "She's quite angry that you've apparently stopped returning her calls now that the divorce has gotten complicated. Feels used," she said. I hadn't known about Vanessa being interviewed, but I trusted Patricia's strategy completely. The mediation went on for 3 brutal hours. Holbrook tried everything. Questioning my fitness as a mother, Patricia destroyed that with medical records. Suggesting I was motivated by spite, Patricia countered with James's own threatening voicemails. Arguing that the support amounts were excessive, Patricia brought out cost of living analyses in James's own salary documentation. Every argument they made, Patricia had a response. Every tactic they tried, she'd already anticipated. I sat quietly through most of it, occasionally answering questions from the mediator, but mostly just watching James squirm. Finally, he spoke directly to me for the first time. "Elena, please, be reasonable. I can't afford what you're asking. I have rent, car payments, living expenses of my own. You're trying to take everything from me." I looked at him, really looked at him, this man I'd loved, who I'd trusted with everything. "You should have thought about that before you sent me a divorce email while I was in the hospital," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. "Before you stole our money, before you chose another woman over your wife and child, before you abandoned your pregnant wife. I made mistakes. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated, documented choices." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a screenshot. "You created a spreadsheet titled Timeline that literally outlined your plan to divorce me when I was most vulnerable. You waited for pregnancy complications. You moved money for months. This wasn't a mistake, James. This was a strategy." His face flushed red. I was trying to prepare. You were trying to destroy me while protecting yourself. And now you're upset that it didn't work." I set my phone down. "You're not the victim here. You're the one who blew up our family. And yes, there are consequences for that. You're doing this out of spite. No, James. I'm doing this because it's what's fair. It's what our daughter deserves. It's what I should have demanded from you all along. Basic decency and accountability." The mediator called for a break, but 2 weeks later, James's lawyer called with a new offer, one much closer to our demands. We negotiated back and forth for another month before finally settling. I got primary custody of Sophia. James got supervised visitation every other weekend to be reassessed in a year. Child support of $2,800 per month with annual increases tied to inflation. Alimony of $4,000 per month for 4 years. 60% of all marital assets, including his 401k. The house, with no buyout required. All medical expenses paid by James. All legal fees paid by James. It wasn't everything we'd asked for, but it was substantial. More importantly, it was fair. The divorce was finalized when Sophia was 3 months old. I felt nothing when I signed the papers. No sadness, no relief, just nothing. That chapter of my life was over. Part 10. Moving forward. The first year was hard in ways I'd never imagined. Being a single mother while recovering from a difficult pregnancy and navigating a contentious divorce would have broken a weaker person. There were days when I wondered if it would break me too. Sophia was a good baby, as good as any newborn could be. She slept in 3-hour stretches at night, which the parenting books assured me was actually quite good. She nursed well, gained weight appropriately, met all her developmental milestones, but she was still a newborn, which meant I was operating on broken sleep, constant vigilance, and a level of exhaustion I'd never experienced before, and I was doing it alone. Maria stayed for 2 weeks after we came home from the hospital, helping with night feedings, cooking meals, handling laundry. She was a godsend, an absolute lifesaver, but she had her own job, her own life. Eventually, she had to go back to it. "Are you sure you'll be okay?" she asked the morning she left, watching me struggle to change a diaper while Sophia screamed her displeasure. "I have to be," I said, finally getting the diaper fastened. "There's no other option." Those first weeks alone were some of the hardest of my life. I'd wake up 3 or 4 times a night to feed Sophia, then struggle to fall back asleep, my mind racing with worries. Was she eating enough? Sleeping enough? Was I doing everything wrong? What if something happened to her and I didn't know how to help? The house felt too empty and too full at the same time. Empty of James's presence, of another adult to share the burden with, but full of baby equipment and dirty laundry and the overwhelming responsibility of keeping another human alive. My body was still recovering from the pregnancy and birth. My blood pressure was slowly returning to normal, but Dr. Chen had warned me it would take months to fully heal. I was supposed to avoid stress, get plenty of rest, eat well. Impossible instructions for a single mother with a newborn. The child support and alimony from James helped enormously. Without it, I don't know how I would have survived financially, but money couldn't buy sleep or sanity or the second pair of hands I desperately needed. I joined an online group for single mothers. Reading their stories helped, knowing I wasn't alone in this struggle, that other women had survived and even thrived under similar circumstances. One woman, Sarah, became a lifeline. She lived nearby and had a 1-year-old daughter. We started meeting for coffee once a week, taking turns holding each other's babies so the other could eat with both hands. "It gets easier," she promised me during one of our meetings, watching me struggle to keep my eyes open. "The first 3 months are survival mode. After that, you start to feel human again." "And when do I start to feel like I'm doing a good job?" I asked. She laughed. "I'll let you know when I get there." The teaching job waited for me, patient and understanding. My principal had called when Sophia was a month old to check in. "Take the full maternity leave," he'd said. "Your job will be here when you're ready. Your students will be here. Don't rush back before you're ready." I took the full 12 weeks, using the time to bond with Sophia, to establish routines, to heal both physically and emotionally from everything that had happened. James exercised his visitation rights sporadically at first. The court had ordered supervised visits, 2 hours every other Sunday at a neutral location with a court-appointed supervisor present. He showed up for the first visit, arriving 10 minutes late with apologies about traffic. The supervisor later told me he'd seemed uncomfortable the entire time, holding Sophia like she was a fragile bomb that might explode. He'd tried to feed her a bottle but given up when she'd fussed. Mostly, he'd just sat there, staring at this tiny person he'd helped create, looking lost. He canceled the next 2 visits. Work emergencies, he claimed. Made the 4th visit. Canceled the 5th and 6th. By the time Sophia was 4 months old, he'd settled into a pattern of seeing her about once a month, if that. "Does he not want to see her?" Maria asked one day when he'd canceled yet another scheduled visit. "I don't think he knows how to be a father," I said, watching Sophia grab at her toes, completely oblivious to her father's absence. "And I don't think he wants to learn." Part of me was angry on Sophia's behalf. She deserved a father who showed up, who tried, who wanted to be in her life. But part of me was also relieved. James's absence meant less conflict, less stress, less reminders of the betrayal that had brought us to this point. When my maternity leave ended, I returned to teaching. It felt both wonderful and terrifying to be back in the classroom. Wonderful because I loved teaching, loved my students, loved having a purpose beyond keeping a tiny human fed and clean. Terrifying because now I was juggling everything: single motherhood, full-time work, ongoing divorce proceedings, trying to maintain some semblance of a normal life. I found a good daycare near the school. The women who ran it were kind and patient, experienced with nervous first-time mothers. Sophia cried the first few times I dropped her off, and I cried in my car afterward, wondering if I was doing the right thing, if she felt abandoned, if I was failing her. But she adjusted. Babies are remarkably resilient, it turns out. And slowly, gradually, I adjusted too. I started therapy, something I probably should have done months earlier. Dr. Morrison was in her 60s, calm and wise, with kind eyes that had seen every kind of trauma. "Tell me about the betrayal," she said in our first session. And I did. I told her about the email, about the stolen money, about discovering the affair and the spreadsheet planning my exploitation. I told her about feeling stupid for not seeing it sooner, angry at James for doing it, scared about the future. "Do you still love him?" she asked. I thought about it carefully, really examining my feelings. No, I don't think I do. I'm not sure I ever really loved who he actually was. I loved who I thought he was, who he pretended to be. The real James, the one who could abandon his pregnant wife by email. I could never love that person. Do you forgive him? I don't know. Maybe someday. But I don't need to forgive him to move on with my life. That's very mature of you. I don't feel mature. I feel angry and hurt, and sometimes still so shocked that this is my life now. That's normal, Dr. Morrison said. You experienced a massive betrayal during one of the most vulnerable times in your life. Of course, you're still processing it. The question is, how do you want to process it? Do you want to be defined by what he did to you? Or do you want to define yourself by how you survived it? I chose survival. I started making my life about more than just surviving. I paid off my legal fees with the alimony. I refinanced the house in my name only, a symbolic severing of the last financial tie to James. I opened college savings accounts for Sophia and contributed to them monthly. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones through the single mothers group. I dated occasionally, though nothing serious. It was hard to trust again, hard to let someone in after what James had done. But I was happy. Genuinely, sustainably happy in a way I hadn't been even before the divorce. Sophia was thriving, a cheerful baby who grew into a curious toddler. She had my eyes and my mother's smile. She had James's stubborn chin, but none of his capacity for cruelty. Watching her grow, hitting milestones, developing her own personality, that was joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Part 11. The Reckoning. 2 years after the divorce, James showed up at my door unannounced. "We need to talk," he said. "You're supposed to schedule visits through the parenting app," I reminded him. "This isn't about Sophia. This is about everything." Against my better judgment, I let him in. Sophia was at daycare, so at least I didn't have to worry about her hearing whatever this was about. James looked different, older, tired. The polished veneer he'd always maintained had cracked. "I made a mistake," he said without preamble. "A huge mistake. Leaving you, leaving Sophia, it was the worst decision of my life." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. "Vanessa and I broke up," he continued. 6 months ago. Turns out she was only interested in me for my money. When she found out how much I was paying you in alimony and child support, she left. The irony was almost funny. "I'm sorry for what I did to you," he said. "For all of it. The email, the money, everything. You didn't deserve that." "No," I agreed. "I didn't. I was hoping. Maybe we could try again. For Sophia's sake. Be a family." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. "You think after everything you did, abandoning me while I was pregnant, stealing our money, missing 2 years of your daughter's life, you can just show up and we'll be a family again? I've changed. I don't care if you've changed, James. I have changed. I'm not the woman you married anymore. I'm not the woman who would take you back because it's easier than being alone. I'm not the woman who would sacrifice her self-respect for the appearance of a happy family. But Sophia needs a father. Sophia has a mother who loves her unconditionally. She has friends who adore her. She has family who show up for her. What she doesn't need is a father who treats her like an obligation when it's convenient for him. James's face fell. So that's it? You won't even consider? No, I won't. You made your choice when you sent me that email. You made your choice every time you missed a visit. Every time you prioritized your girlfriend over your daughter. Every time you complained about the support payments that feed and house your child. I stood up, making it clear the conversation was over. You can be in Sophia's life if you want. You can be a good father going forward. But you and me? We're done. We were done the moment you hit send on that email. Elena. Goodbye, James. He left, and I closed the door behind him with a sense of finality. That evening, I picked Sophia up from daycare and took her to the park. She was 2 now, running around with the fearless confidence of a toddler, laughing at everything. "Mama, push!" she demanded, climbing onto the swing. I pushed her, watching her giggle with delight, and thought about how far we'd come. 2 years ago, I'd been lying in a hospital bed, pregnant and betrayed, feeling like my world was ending. Now I was here, watching my daughter play, living a life I'd built from the ashes of my marriage. James had thought I was weak, thought I was helpless, thought I'd have no choice but to accept whatever scraps he threw my way. He'd been wrong. Epilogue. 3 years later, I'm sitting in my backyard watching Sophia play in her sandbox when my phone buzzes with an email from Patricia. The subject line makes me smile. Guess who just filed for bankruptcy? James. Apparently his better job opportunity had fallen through. He'd made some bad investments. Vanessa had sued him for breach of promise, whatever that meant, and he'd fallen behind on his alimony and child support payments. Now he was filing for bankruptcy and asking for a reduction in support. Patricia's email continues. Don't worry, I'll fight this. His income might have dropped, but he still has obligations to his daughter. We'll make sure Sophia is protected. I closed the email and set my phone aside. 3 years ago, that news would have terrified me, would have sent me into a spiral of anxiety about money and stability and what would happen to us. Now, I feel nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, just a mild sense of, that's unfortunate for him, because I don't need James anymore. Don't need his money, his approval, his presence in my life beyond what's required for Sophia's sake. I have a good job. I have this house, paid off with the settlement. I have savings and investments and a secure future I built myself. Sophia is happy and healthy and loved. She asks about her daddy sometimes, but she's not affected by his absence the way I once feared she would be. She has enough love in her life to make up for one absent parent. I've even started dating someone, a kind, patient man named Thomas who teaches at the same school I do. He's met Sophia a few times, always respectful, never pushing, understanding that I come with baggage and boundaries. You're remarkable, you know that? He said to me last week. Everything you've been through, and you're still so strong. I'm not strong, I told him. I'm just stubborn. There's a difference. But maybe I am strong. Maybe I've always been strong, and I just didn't realize it because I never needed to be. James's email had felt like the end of my world, the ultimate betrayal, the cruelest abandonment. But it had also been a gift in a way. It had shown me who I really was when everything was stripped away. It had forced me to fight for myself and my daughter. It had taught me that I didn't need someone else to complete me or support me or validate me. I was enough. I had always been enough. Sophia runs over to me, her hands full of sand. Mama, look, I made a castle. It's beautiful, baby. Can we have ice cream? I check my watch. After dinner. But Mama, after dinner, I repeat firmly. Go play for 10 more minutes, then we'll go inside and make dinner together. She pouts, but runs back to her sandbox, already chattering to her imaginary friends about what they're having for dinner. I watch her play, this amazing little human I created, and I think about that woman lying in a hospital bed 3 years ago. She'd been scared and hurt and betrayed, but she'd also been gathering evidence, making plans, preparing to fight. She'd been weak, they thought. They'd been wrong. The end. Author's note. Financial abuse and abandonment during pregnancy are more common than many people realize. If you're experiencing a partner who controls all money and access to accounts, threats of abandonment, if you don't comply with demands, isolation from family and support systems, financial dependence used as a weapon, abuse that escalates during pregnancy. Please know, you have rights and options. Resources available: National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233, Pregnancy Justice, legal support for pregnant people, WIC and state assistance programs, legal aid societies that help with family law, domestic violence shelters that provide safety and support. Document everything. Screenshots, emails, bank statements, threatening messages, all of it can be evidence. You are not weak for being victimized. You are not weak for needing help. You are strong for surviving. You are strong for fighting back. And you are enough, with or without the person who betrayed you. Your story doesn't end with their cruelty. It begins with your courage to stand up and demand better. For yourself, for your children, for your future. You are stronger than you know.